The Verdant Monolith was less a house and more a billionaire's apology to the planet. Perched on a jagged Amalfi cliff that looked as though it had been sharpened by a Cartier lapidary, the estate was a miracle of carbon-negative concrete and self-healing glass. It was designed to be invisible to satellites, a blind spot in the global surveillance grid where the 0.001% could congregate to discuss the burden of their own existence, without the inconvenience of being seen. Allegra Thorne stood on the terrace, swirling a glass of synthetic 1947 Cheval Blanc. It was a molecular masterpiece, chemically identical to the original, yet entirely untouched by soil, sun, or the grimy hands of a seasonal laborer. To Allegra, it tasted like math. It lacks the je ne sais quoi of actual rot, doesn't it? Allegra didn't turn. She knew the voice, Caspar Vance, a man whose venture capital firm had recently rebranded as a human flourishing collective. Caspar had spent the last decade perfected the art of AI washing, using algorithms to predict which third-world forests were most likely to burn so he could sell carbon offsets against them before the first spark. Rot is a legacy emotion, Caspar, Allegra said, her voice a cool blade. We're here for the Translucency Summit. We're supposed to be post-decay, clean, transparent. And yet you're here, Caspar smirked, leaning against the balustrade. The girl who makes the awkward parts of wealth disappear. How is the narrative decoupling going with your father? I hear the Swiss authorities are still looking for the other 4 billion. My father is a historical footnote, Allegra said. Her expression is unreadable as a redacted subpoena. I've legally and socially disavowed the Thorne lineage. My wealth is held in a series of blind, regenerative trusts that focus exclusively on oceanic restoration. If you want to talk about my father, talk to his lawyers in Zurich. I believe they're currently operating out of a basement. This was the lie Allegra told with the most grace. In reality, her decoupling was a masterpiece of financial origami. She had publicly divested from her father's disgraced bank, while privately ensuring the capital flowed through a dozen shell companies, eventually landing back in her lap under the guise of impact investment returns. She was the ultimate hypocrite in a room full of people who thought sustainability was a feature you could toggle on a private jet. The gala was the climax of the week, the gala of absolution. The dress code was ethereal white, intended to signify purity, though in the low amber light of the monolith, it mostly made the guests look like a cluster of high-end ghosts. The center of attention was a lead-lined safe, displayed in the middle of the atrium like a holy relic. Inside sat the ledger. It was a physical book, a deliberate, kitschy nod to authenticity, containing the unscrubbed supply chain data for the world's leading green luxury brands. It was the only copy in existence. In a world of digital hacks, the host, a Nepo baby named Julian Vane, whose family owned half the lithium in the Andes, believed that paper was the only thing that couldn't be zero-date. It's the ultimate flex, Julian had told the crowd earlier. True transparency means having nothing to hide, even when it's written in ink. Except, of course, Julian did have things to hide. The ledger contained the coordinates of the ghost mines and the real age of the artisanal weavers in the Punjab. It was a roadmap to a PR apocalypse. Allegra was halfway through a conversation with a TikTok famous heiress who was trying to rebrand poverty as minimalism when the lights flickered. It was a brief, elegant dimming, part of the atmospheric experience. But when the monolith's bioluminescent chandeliers hummed back to full power, the safe was hanging open. The ledger was gone. The silence that followed was heavy, expensive, and terrified.
Security has locked the perimeter, Julian Vane announced, his face the color of bleached linen. The Verdant Monolith is airtight. No one leaves until the ledger is returned. This is a violation of the Translucency Protocol. Allegra felt a thrill of cynical delight. This wasn't just a theft, it was a market correction. The cozy investigation began in the Library of Contemplation, a room filled with books no one had ever read, bound in vegan mushroom leather. Allegra, requested by Julian for her unique discretion, sat across from the primary suspects. There was Sloane DeWitt, a girl whose entire personality was built on inherited guilt. She wore a dress made of recycled fishing nets that probably cost more than the village the nets came from. I didn't take it, Sloane whispered, clutching a cup of chamomile tea. But honestly, maybe it's better if it's gone. My family's sustainable timber business is just clear-cutting with a PR firm. If that ledger gets out, I'm finally free of the burden. Free of the burden or free of the bank account? Allegra asked, her eyes narrowing. Because without the timber money, Sloane, you're just a girl with a very expensive hobby in hand-poking tattoos. Next was Casper Vance. He looked bored. Why would I steal a book? If I wanted that data, I'd have scraped their servers months ago. Physical objects are for people who still believe in gravity. It's archaic. You hate archaic things, Casper, Allegra noted. You've been lobbying Julian to digitize the ledger for years. Destroying the physical copy forces him onto your platform. It's a very disruptive move. Allegra, darling, Casper smiled. You're projecting. You're the one whose entire career depends on keeping secrets in the dark. If that ledger leaks, your narrative decoupling service becomes obsolete. Who needs an architect when the building is already on fire?
Allegra felt a bead of sweat at her hairline. Caspar was right. Her business model relied on the illusion of transparency. Actual transparency was her extinction event. She excused herself and walked the perimeter of the atrium. The monolith was supposed to be perfect, a closed loop, but every system had a leak. She looked at the lead-lined safe. The door hadn't been forced. It had been opened with a biometric override. Only Julian had the code, but Julian was currently having a panic attack in the master suite. She wandered toward the kitchen of origin, where the synthetic wine was processed. The air smelled of ozone and lemon zest. There, sitting at a reclaimed driftwood table, was the estate's chief steward, a man named Henri, who had served the veins for 40 years. He was polishing a glass with a microfiber cloth. The ledger is quite heavy, isn't it, Henri? Allegra asked softly. Henri didn't look up. 12 pounds of hypocrisy, Mademoiselle Thorne. It's a miracle the shelf didn't collapse sooner. Where is it? In the composter, Henri said, his voice devoid of emotion. By morning, it will be nutrient-rich soil for the vertical gardens, a truly sustainable end for such a green document. Allegra stepped back. You stole it? Why? Julian will ruin you. Monsieur Julian wouldn't know how to boil an egg without an app, Henri said, finally looking at her. His eyes were tired. I didn't steal it for money. I stole it because I'm tired of the theater. Every year, you people come here to absolve yourselves. You drink wine made in a lab and talk about the earth while you build monuments of concrete on its throat. The ledger isn't a confession, it's a script. As long as it exists, you can pretend you're managing the truth. Without it, you're just rich people in a house. Allegra felt a strange, jarring sensation. It was a moment of deep, uncomfortable intrigue. Henri wasn't a thief, he was a nihilist. But as she looked at him, she realized something else. You're not just the steward, she whispered. You're the one who leaked my father's offshore accounts to the Swiss press 3 years ago. Henri smiled, a thin, brittle thing. Your father was sloppy. He thought the help was part of the furniture. He didn't realize that the furniture has ears. Why tell me this now? Because, Henri said, standing up, I know you didn't come here to find the ledger for Julian. You came here to find it for yourself. You need to know if your name is in it. You need to know if your blind trusts are as blind as you tell the world they are. Allegra's heart hammered against her ribs. And am I in it? Henri gestured towards the kitchen's industrial composter, a sleek steel machine humming in the corner. The first 40 pages are already mulch. I believe the section on offshore narrative architecture was the first to go. It was very pulpy. Allegra looked at the machine. The data, the proof of her double life, the link to her father's stolen billions, was being turned into fertilizer for Julian Vane's organic kale. She could stop it. She could reach in, pull out the remains, and save her reputation. Or she could let it burn. If the ledger was gone, the proof was gone. But so was her leverage. She looked at Henri. If I tell Julian it was you, you'll go to prison. And if you don't, Henri replied, you'll have to live with the fact that your entire life is currently being digested by a machine designed to save the planet. It's quite poetic, in a cynical sort of way. Allegra stood in the silence of the zero-carbon kitchen. She thought of the gala of absolution upstairs, the white dresses, the synthetic wine, the performative guilt. She realized that Henri wasn't the villain of this cozy little mystery. He was the only honest person in the building. She walked to the composter and hit the high heat cycle. It was a security glitch, Allegra said, her voice regaining its razor-sharp edge, an electromagnetic pulse from the solar storm. The digital lock reset and the physical contents were lost in the subsequent system purge. A tragedy for transparency, really. Henri nodded once. A very clean narrative, mademoiselle. An hour later, Allegra was back on the terrace. The guests were being informed of the technical failure. There was a collective, palpable sigh of relief. The status quo had been preserved. Their secrets were safe, not because they were well hidden, but because the evidence had been repurposed as plant food. Julian Vane approached her, looking shaken but relieved. Allegra, thank God. A system purge. My engineers are devastated, of course, but at least we know it wasn't a breach of trust. Trust is such a fragile currency, Julian, Allegra said, taking a sip of a fresh glass of wine. Better to rely on infrastructure. You're a lifesaver. I don't know how I can thank you. Actually, Allegra said, her eyes tracking Casper Vance across the room, I'm thinking of expanding my firm. I want to move into deep legacy scrubbing. I'll need a few introductions to the Andean Lithium board. Of course, anything. As Julian wandered off, Allegra felt the weight of the night settling on her. She had won. Her secrets were mulch. Her career was about to hit a new peak of profitable hypocrisy. She was the ultimate legacy architect, a woman who could build a palace out of lies and call it a garden. She looked out over the Amalfi coast. The moon was reflected in the water, shimmering over the spot where the monolith's invisible foundations met the sea. It was a beautiful view, entirely bought and paid for. She realized then that the Translucency Summit had been a success after all. She saw through everyone, and for the first time, she saw through herself. She was just like the wine, a perfect synthetic recreation of something that used to be real, designed to be consumed by people who couldn't tell the difference. She raised her glass to the dark, satellite-proof sky. To the truth, she whispered. May it always be used as fertilizer. The ending was sharp, quiet, and perfectly contained, just like the monolith itself. Upstairs, the 0.001% continued to dance in their white clothes, blissfully unaware that they were standing on a foundation of their own shredded sins, and that Allegra Thorne was the only one who knew how to make the garden grow.